Hello, good morning, good afternoon, good evening to you, depending on where you are. And welcome to another episode of the Serene View. I'm Serene, your host. And today with me, I have Katrin, and we are talking again about burnout. So, the whole series for this season, we are talking about burnout. It started off with my own burnout. I was burnt out during COVID and I had a hard time recovering. And then I shared last week, oh no, 2 weeks ago in the last episode about a lady who had her own issues and now has a practice helping individuals to recover from burnout. Today I have with me Katrin. Katrin is going to look at it from a more organizational viewpoint because I think a lot of us recognize this, right? That when burnout levels are at 85%, 82% globally, 85% here in Singapore. It is not just us anymore. It's not just, we don't have the resilience, but it's really the workplace, and the workplace has to change. So I've invited Catherine today because she, when she was the CEO of Mercer, put in a really effective burnout prevention program. So today she'll share with us what are some of the lessons that she has learned from that program, and what are some of the advice that she will give other business leaders who want to put this program in place. So if you could join me to welcome Catherine, would you like to do a short introduction for yourself, Catherine?
Sure. Well, I mean, I was not the CEO of Mercer, but only Mercer Switzerland. So I had this little country was in charge of this little country, but with many headquarters. So with a lot of international connections from internally with Mercer, but also with the clients. And so my background, I'm coming from the consulting field. I have an expertise in restructuring companies and businesses. And also, before I was the CEO of Mercer, I led very large and complex technology projects and transformation projects mainly throughout the consultancy world, but also with clients. So that is my background. And today, nowadays, I decided to step down from Mercer, not because I didn't like it, but because I wanted to go back to the school bench and to learn more about the impact of sustainability and circularity on business models. So I do my doctorate program, and in parallel, I'm working one to one with clients on that.
Thank you very much for your introduction. So
Thank you.
let's just talk a little bit about this program that you have put in place for burnout prevention. I mean, what was the situation that really needed you to put this program in place at that time?
Sure. I think that every responsible business leader, and especially as an employer with the CEO role, um, it is as a responsible employer, it is really important that you put in place some prevention programs, because especially with burnout, you never exactly know when and how it is going to happen. Um, and I was listening 2 weeks ago um, to the discussion you had with Kelly Swinger, and which I found absolutely amazing. When Kelly said, when you suspect that someone could be be a candidate of a burnout, you better don't approach that person, because else this person wants to prove you, as well as themselves, herself or himself, that they are under control of the situation. And it's the trap I fell into. So we had one associate who was, I noticed that the attitude, the control controlling part of this person was really, really, really strong. We couldn't really approach the person in saying, okay, maybe you can keep it cool, maybe we can help you. And the thing is, as a leader, and this is for me really important because we say so many things from, or we expect so many things from leaders. Well, first, as a leader, it is your duty to mitigate risk, to prevent them. So if the behavior, the attitude, the overwhelm of an associate becomes beyond the associate's himself or herself, it is your duty to approach that and to tackle that. But this goes exactly in what Kelly was saying. I mean, the danger that you're going beyond what you should be doing and that you are basically initiating something which you didn't want to is pretty big. The other thing is, I think that also as a leader and as a CEO, and I was so happy to have on my side at that time my HR director. She said something which was absolutely beautiful. She said, "Well, Catherine, we are neither medical doctor, nor are we a therapist, nor are we a psychologist, nor are we a psychiatrist. So we are not equipped to approach this. Besides, also the privacy area of a person that works at your place or in your company. And the third one is that for someone who has never ever lived a burnout, you might maybe develop or have some blind spots or biases that you aren't aware of. And I can give you here a very quick example. I recall some 15, 17 years ago, I had one day one of my team leaders shutting up the door of my office and saying, Catherine, I have a problem. I have an anxiety crisis. I don't know what to do anymore. And I looked at the person and I said, well, I would like to help you, but I don't know how. And it is, it was interesting because I tried to list all the capabilities that this person had, but this person told me, well, I cannot do anything with it because I still have this anxiety crisis. Now, fast forward in 2019, just before I handed in my thesis for my master's degree, I had a bronchitis, and all of a sudden, for whatever reason, it triggered an anxiety crisis in me. And for good's sake, I had a good doctor who gave me the right pills, plant based pills, and it helped. But I had to call the person. I said, you know what? I owe you an apology because besides my idiotic smile at that time, I have now felt what it means to have an anxiety crisis because I went through it myself. So, meaning if you are a leader or an HR director and have not gone through that, you're definitely not well equipped. So, having this one associates, we thought with the HR director, okay, the only thing that we can do is to prevent, if possible, I mean, that this happens again. So we went to the overarching organization in Switzerland who is taking charge of accidents, health issues at work, insurance and prevention, rehabilitation. And we talked to them, and they were really pleased that we did the extra mile, that we went for it. And they said, okay, go back to your health insurance insurer and talk to them. And I can only say that to HR people, I mean, here in who will watch it, as well as to CEOs or leaders, go for it. These insurers have really good prevention tools. So, how did it happen for us? They came in, we had a discussion, and they presented how they approach their method to prevent burnout. And we did it in a very how should I say, it was not a blaming thing, sort of real specific, you know, how how can we find triggers? How can we find patterns? I mean, how is the organization set up? What are the limitations? What are the risks? How can we mitigate it? So we decided for them to do an audit with leaders as well as with some staff members to find that all out. We had then a discussion with them and HR and myself, and then we said, okay, well, okay, let's do it. And the basically the prevention was a workshop, I think a series of workshop, two or three. I don't recall exactly because I had not been invited for privacy reasons. So it's kind of a, how should I say, it's sad that when you initiate something like this, you cannot be part of it. I mean,
So the
but it is
boss is not invited. Is that what happened?
absolutely out. I mean,
Okay.
not, we don't want to see you, but
Yes.
it really helped. I mean, we did not have anymore this situation because, I mean, this, you need to understand that when a few years back you had peaks and lows during, I mean, production at your, I mean, in the consulting business. But nowadays it's basically all the time, it's like above average and then peaks. And so if you don't have enough people at hand, who are, I mean, enough experts, it can really lead really quickly to that situation. Now, the workshop, what I know, consisted of talking with the associates about what is burnout, what are the prevention that you can do yourself to protect yourself, how can you push the boundaries for the burnout until you fall into a burnout, so that you have enough space around you to organize yourself with the work, with how you're handling situations. And I must say, it has been really, it was impressive. It costed us something. I mean, for the ones who are running the business. On the other side, your insurance fees are not rising. They are maybe even lowering. So it's a zero sum game. So it is a win-win for everyone.
Do you think that you actually got your ROI or even more from this from the cost that you spent?
That is a good question. Um, we had some discussion with our team leaders, and the division leaders. I don't think so because I used to be a quite, well, pushy person, a leader. I must say it very openly, but I've never experienced something like this before. I never did, and so for me it was almost like something, I mean, I could not accept to have in my organization. And just be, we need also to see that I had only um, three locations and 100 to 120 people, meaning I knew everyone. And so it is absolutely, for me it was my duty, my ethical duty to prevent something. I didn't want to have that happen. No, I don't think that it had an an impact. It was a difficult time, though, for the colleagues who had to then, especially for the person who then really experienced a burnout and was away for, I think it was 2 or 3 months, to absorb the work that this associate was doing. But besides that, no. I think that we have been a too small organization and that I was too aware of, how should I say, the balance, the very thin line balance there was in my organization, that I could not allow myself. I didn't have enough mass, if you want to, that if I have 10, let's say 10 or 20 burnouts, yeah, I can somehow manage it because I have, 200 other, or I can spread it over 200 other people. So, with small organizations, you should be better aware of, you know, taking care of every single individual so that they can continue to function as they should, and as you are also, as they, I mean, you offering them also the possibility of growing, and with the experience in your company.
I just maybe to reiterate what you've covered, which is a
Mhm.
lot, and I think it starts off with actually you seeing your seeing people being burnt out in your organization. And obviously, I mean, as leaders, we need to ask ourselves, right, are we equipped to deal with this burnout? Are we equipped to work on the burnout as a situation? And a lot of the leaders may have, they may have biases, they may not be able to, deal with it. Right? So they are ill-equipped to deal with mental health, and as a result, what you decided to do instead is to start to prevent it. And I was very amused that you spoke to your insurers first. And because I mean, my first fear as a leader will be, will they increase our insurance sum, if they realize that, right? But as you said, they do have good prevention tools, and it is in their interest to also prevent it in organizations. Right? And then you looked at what were the triggers, what were the risks, how do you mitigate it, and you did an audit, which I thought was excellent, right? To really find the real situation within your organization. Then you put into place a series of workshops, talking to associates really about what is burnout and what they can do to prevent it. Obviously, the advice here is don't invite the boss. Don't invite the boss because the boss
You
may
won't
not
be
be so
invited
helpful.
anyway. You
They won't
won't
be
be
It'll be
invited.
right, yes. But really, it's about teaching the people how do they set boundaries, how do they give themselves that space, so that they are able to kind of push off, you know, burn out a bit further. To be fair, I think you spend the money, but you don't feel you've got an ROI. Although I think looking at it, so my background is in HR, looking at it from HR point of view, I
Well,
would say that if you
can
have,
can can I interrupt you
sure,
with regard to the return on investment? I mean, because we it lowered our insurance rates. It was
right.
an return on investment. What I was talking about was more an return on investment with regard to the work. Where could we be more efficient, or have we changed something? Which led to higher productivity, and at the same time also helped our employees and our associates to well, to have more space in a certain way. That no, that no.
So you did get back your money from the insurers,
Yes,
but
yes.
maybe not from a kind of increasing productivity point of view. But as you said, I mean, you felt that it was an ethical duty for leaders to deal with it. And also, I mean, you may say that your organization is small, but even in larger organizations, I realize this, right? That most people are stretched. And if you have one person, down for burnout or for any mental health reasons, then that workload gets spread out and it becomes, everyone else becomes even more stretched. And then it becomes a
Mhm.
domino effect, right? It's an accelerating loss of people. So, for those of you who are here on the call with us, if you have any questions for Catherine, about this program or about what has happened, or if you have situations in your own organization that you are looking at, that you may want to discuss, I mean, just drop your questions, your comments into the comment page, and we can talk about it or share. So I guess from me, Catherine, is after going through this whole program, right? I mean, doing this for your organization and so forth. I mean, what's the lessons that you have taken away or the insights that you've gained from doing this?
That it was first, I mean, first, it was the right thing to do. And I can only recommend doing so, having burnout cases or not, because it's really about prevention. And to have an outside view, and especially your insurance company, your health insurance companies, they are really looking on how they can support you, help you. And to get an external look with at your organization to see if there's some potential, toxicity running around the corridors of your company, or behaviors or attitudes or pressures happening from leadership, or etc. I think it is a really important thing, to have them working, I mean, to work hand in hand together. This is one thing. The other lessons I've learned is that I should have implemented it to become a or institutionalizing it, meaning that we should have run these workshops every year as a refresher, because people tend to forget. People tend to think that they understood something when, and then, a mass of work roll over them, and then it might still happen. So I think that the repetition is the masters of skills. I mean, it needs to be repeated over and over on a regular basis. And the other thing is, because approximately at the same time, i went to I went to a retreat in a monastery south of Paris, where I usually go when I have some things to just, decouple myself or unlink myself from the external world. And I met, or I saw this book we talked about also in the chat, from this French medical doctor and priest, and talking about the burnout. And this is where I learned about the um, Maslow burnout. Um, what is it? In the indicator, the MBA and or MBI, pardon. And it really, really opened my eyes on how to assess yourself, quickly, if you are in danger, why you are in danger. And it helps you to also evaluate as an individual if you should see someone. And for instance, when I did it for myself, I had one category in dark red, one in dark orange, and one in green. So I knew that I would never um, suffer from a burnout. I mean, following the MBY. However, though, I mean, I took some tolls on from a health perspective, but that is another discussion. But I think that it is absolutely important that everyone is taking care of ourselves. And the thing I've learned also with it is that, do whatever you can to have, either to do some yoga or meditation, whatever form it is, which suits you as an individual, so that you can anchor yourself, that you can learn how to get more space, that you can create this safe space around you where you are yourself, you're connected with yourself, and get this peace in you. Because what I found is, and also listening to who went through a burnout, I'm always amazed about the different shades that burnout can take. And it is almost impossible for someone who is not a medical doctor, someone who knows about really burnout, when it is going to happen, and especially not as a leader. So the more you get accustomed with all these different techniques, assessments, talking with your insurance company, talking also with people who suffered a burnout, you can learn a lot from it. So these are my learnings, my personal learnings.
Yes, we spoke about this, and I think it's called the Luck, which I will put it in right now. It's called the Luck Burnout Inventory. For those of you who are interested, you can Google it online. There is both a paper to it's free online. You can find a free inventory online to do it for yourself, and there's also a paper to teach you how to use it. I spoke about it in one of my posts last week as well on LinkedIn, sharing the links for all of these information. So for those of you who are interested, please go and have it checked out. You can do it for yourself. You can ask your team to do it. Because as we spoke about with Kelly, right, a lot of the times if I tell people that they're burned out, they actually work harder to prove that they're not burned out. And actually having an independent inventory is good. Like what you said, these are things that you've learned, right? That as leaders, we are not well equipped, and so
Mm-mm.
having somebody who is, I mean, getting something that is from someone well equipped, that could be helpful for us.
You know, the question I still have is, um, even today, is to understand, for a person who went through, who lived this painful experience of a burnout, how can leaders help you once you get slowly out of, out of the curve, and you find again your new balance? How can leaders help people who went through a burnout? because because now that I went through all of it, I know how to prevent it in a certain way. I know how to spot certain first signs. But because it is so individual, can you maybe share? Now I'm asking you that question. How can leaders, what can we do as leaders to help people who went through a burnout?
So I think two things really. The first experience of burnout is this almost a, a total exhaustion of all of your resources, physical, mental, emotional. You have completely exhausted your resources. And at that point, I think it's no longer perhaps no longer the work of the leader, but a lot of it requires professional help, and obviously a break or some time off from work. So that is the first stage. After that, as we recover and gain back some of these resources, a lot of these people will come back to work. And it's for us as leaders, I think, to think about what in the first place made this happen, right? Is it, as you said, a toxic work environment? Were there unreasonable demands? Are there individual leaders who are stressing people out, or is this more an institutional thing? So as leaders, we can think on that and see whether there is something that needs to change, not just for this one person, but perhaps for all the other potential burnouts that could happen. And then for the person who is coming back, is this understanding that they may not be able to perform at the level that they were at least for quite a while. Um, it took me at least months to recover. I talked to Kelly Swinger. She also had a burnout, and it took her years to recover. Hers was even more serious than mine. She was actually had several operations. She was in the hospital for 6 months, and so there will be a time where this person may not perform at the level that they used to, and actually, perhaps this person should never perform at that level because that was the level that pushed them into burnout. right? So
Mhm.
it's maybe rethinking what is the work that should be handled now. There are several types of burnout, and we tend to use the blanket phrase burnout, but there are several different kind of like things that are similar to burnout in terms of exhaustion, but they're not real burnout. So, for example, one is what they call starting to call moral injury, which is being asked to do something that goes against our values, and that causes an extreme exhaustion. Secondly, from a HR point of view, it's doing something that is really not our strength, doing something that where we are struggling each day to be able to deliver because it's really not it's a real talent and job requirement mismatch. And then the third one is doing work that we basically feel is pointless and meaningless, and we cannot see the contribution of what we are doing to the greater to something greater than us. So those are, I think, different kind of maybe different variants of burnout. And actually, as leader, is really going down and looking at the work and saying, hey, why was this person pushed to that extreme? Is it really overwork, or is it they're doing something that's meaningless? It may not be meaningless. It could be in many organizations, especially bigger ones. There's no line of sight. I don't know how what I do contributes to my team or contributes to my organization at all. I don't know what's the meaning of what I do, and actually helping them to see the bigger picture could be one way, making work more meaningful. Secondly, looking at how you can strategize operations so that it's really not, um, we are not doing things for the sake of doing things. We are not doing an unnecessarily complicated process if this can be done simpler. And then the third one is looking at, is this person in the right job and the right fit for that job? So those I would say are the four things. Oh, and one more is the values, right? I mean, is this person being asked to do something that is unethical or against their personal values? So those are perhaps the four things that leaders can look at. Um, I do recognize that it's a big ask, right? It's really a big ask because many leaders, 77% apparently of executives report that they are burnt out at the moment, and this is just like 2 months ago. So I do recognize that it is a big ask, and many leaders are burned out themselves. But I think if you are in a position of power and you do have some leeway, then, as you mentioned, right, the onus is on the people on top because it's much harder as you go down the levels for them to do anything. I think that those are some of the things that I will share.
I mean, this number you're citing is really staggering because I mean, is I I do understand that. How should I frame it? Especially as a leader, we should be able to say when it is too much. I mean, it is. I know there's a lot of pressure, but at one point in time, it is we we it is also our obligation to say no when it's too much. Now, this leads me to the bias and to the blind spots that we have, that we all have in a certain way. I mean, like involuntarily, you won't admit if you are in the position that you losing control of, what you're doing and what you should be delivering and performing, and it gets on your nerves. And so it's a downward spiral. And on the other side, I think that it is also our obligation to say no because we are following a trend since the 80s, 90s, where we were trying to work with less and less and less people by putting more and more and more and more pressure. Now, it is true that it should unleash resourcefulness and creativity with that, and um, what can we do or run in a more efficient way, but it should never go um, it should never, I mean, people should not pay the price for it. So for me it is still, I'm this topic really fascinates me, because it is one of the biggest signs, or signs, not signs, signs that in a certain way we are not doing, in general, we're not doing, um, or leading companies in the right way, in a certain way, if I may say so. And um, and it requires for us to review and revisit constantly. Is our approach the right one? What can we learn? How can we, I mean, what can we do better to continue to be good employers, to offer jobs to people? And especially as we are walking into more and more talent wars, I mean, even with generative AI and etc. But I mean, um, it is our duty as employers to make sure that we offer a safe place to every employee. Would it be from the clerk up to the CEO? Because the CEO is also only an employee. I mean, and unless the CEO is also the founder of the company or the owner. Um, so I think that really, I mean, it is, we we need to learn more and more about burnout and how we can integrate it. And I think that, especially in larger organizations where you have, let's say, 5,000 people, 10,000, 200,000 people, it's way more difficult to spot where there are some patterns that lead to burnout. But we should measure them very carefully, because it is a sign that our organization is not functioning in the way it should. But as I said before, leaders are not well equipped to deal with burnout, because first, you cannot approach the person. I mean, privacy reasons, like with my MBY, I cannot, or MBI, I cannot go to you, Serene, and say, listen, Serene, I found something here which seems to be really interesting. Why don't you have a look? That I cannot do. I cannot, even if I say, okay, Serene or Catherine, your performance is not really the same as it used to be. You're partly you're stepping over, especially as you're going into the health area, or also personal life. And on the other side, I mean, you are obliged to look at for risks. I mean, which could hinder your delivery to clients. I mean, your delivery in general, the performance, so that one person doesn't drag down the whole team. And I have found out, what I noticed is, and please correct me, that um, it has also to do with a lack of fear, no, a fear of losing control of a situation. Is that true? Is my
Um,
intuition true?
I certainly think that a fear of losing control of the situation, and actually almost a kind of fight or flight instinct
Mm,
kicks in once you are past a certain stage. I mean, 2 weeks ago when I discussed with Kelly Swinger, who is actually the psychologist and more well equipped to talk on this than I am. But what she shared is this, which is when we are first starting, I mean, of course, when we start to get a bit overloaded, we do our best, right? But what
yes.
happens is when it passes midpoint, you go into almost survival mode. And I am speaking to business leaders right now in my coaching practice. that say exactly that. I am now in survival mode. I just want to be able to get all this done, get my backlog cleared, get through the day, and so on. But once you get into that mode, your brain misinterprets this as a life and death situation, like what it was in the prehistoric times. When tigers could eat us, or we could die from dinosaurs or something. But what happens then is that when this fight or flight kicks in, we start to see everything as life and death, and we need more and more to control and more to prove that we can do it. We would actually start to take on things that we obviously are too overloaded to take on and try, like, kill ourselves almost to get it done, because it now becomes, in our mind, framed as life and death. And that is actually more that's why it's a vicious cycle, and it's an accelerating process, because the more out of balance we are in our minds, the worse the decision making becomes, and actually that accelerates the whole burnout cycle. So that's actually what I mean by, you know programs like yours, where we try to prevent people from even getting to the point where they are making poor decisions because their mind, or their mental health has been so compromised. And that's actually the mechanism that happens. So I'm not sure whether it is a control in the beginning, but at a certain point it becomes that.
Yes.
Obviously, there are also studies that say people who have a greater need of control, who have a more perfectionist streak in them,
Mm.
are at greater risk of burnout. But that is something I think that's quite common sense. If we are much more demanding on ourselves,
Right. Right.
then we are at a higher risk. So I think that also works as well.
The thing that I found really interesting with the MBI was the three categories. I think if I recall well, it's 17 or 18 questions, split in three categories. The first is the exhaustion, as you were saying it. Then the second one is the cynicism, and that you develop towards yourself. You're not able. You're taking this distance from what you do. And you said it also earlier. It's about, you know what is the purpose of what I'm doing here? And so, whatever I do, it will never lead to anything worth it. And interestingly, this doctor found out, during his work, writing this book, was, he called it the illness of giving. So he was saying that all the nurses, educators, teachers, doctors, priests, pardon, he's not priestess, priests, people giving a lot. And women also tend to give a lot, to care a lot, that at one point in time, if there is this exhaustion, and also they don't feel efficient anymore, which is a third category, there is this detachment, this distance, and then this cynicism of, why do I even do that? It's not worth it. And see, that is the category which always prevented me I'm not to burn out, because I didn't have this. When I did this assessment, I thought, yes, at least I don't have this problem. No, but I was, when you work consecutively, 6 days a week, between 16 to 17 hours, you sleep only 3 to 4 hours a night. It gets on your health. And I did it because I loved it, and I know that I would do exactly the same thing. um in French I would say une incorrigible, so you cannot correct me. It's because I do it out of passion, but because I was getting, also the feedback from the people, and I was looking also for feedback, to have this recognition, or to hug someone also at work. I mean, I know, I mean, in the States I couldn't do that because I would be, prosecuted for harassment. And at least here in Europe, we can hug someone, we can tell them that we like them without that it goes somewhere else, or lands somewhere else. It gives you this connection with people, and this care, and you get it back also from people, when they know that if they have a problem, they can come up to you and talk to you. And this human connection, is this richness, is that which I found has helped me as a leader also to have sometimes some difficult discussions with associates, and still see, okay, what can we do? How can we help you? How can we discuss maybe with HR, with your manager, on what do we need to change? Where can we tell us what we're doing wrong, or what we're missing, so that we can see how to embed it into the organization or the process. And I think an organization should always remain as close as possible, or in touch with their associates. So that's, I mean, that has been the learnings for me over now 35 years working in corporate and as a consultant, where I'm saying, I mean, yeah, I mean, how should I mean, to be blunt, I mean, all the successes I had, I could only achieve them because we were a team. I don't believe in the lone hero story. I'm not a lone hero. I'm part of a team, and we did it together. And I think that also, when you have this approach with your team members, that they know that they are part of the story, that they are not only watchers, but that they can be actors, even if I don't like it from time to time, or that I get a slap, not a physical one, but I mean, that they're telling me, Catherine, you better not do it this way. You're advancing together. And I think that, and that was the reason why I was so astonished when I had this case where I saw boom, 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 is going into burnout, and I needed to do something. I mean, I could not help the individual personally because it was too personal, but at least that I could make sure that we would embrace the prevention in a different way, in an active way.
I think if I just summarize what you've said, some of the things that leaders can do. The first really is, as you said, right? I mean, look at this as a possible, warning sign for your organization that your processes are not working for your people. Know that we should be taking this seriously as leaders. This is, as you mentioned, a disease of caring, because people care too much about what they're doing, and therefore they are overly committed. Also, that even leaders need the human connection. You need to care for your people, but also to receive care from your people. I
Mhm.
think a lot of the time, just leaders is this, as you mentioned, right, lone hero idea. I should save the world, right? But the world doesn't need to come and save me. But we are all human, and this is what we need. And often we need to be humble enough to tell your associates, right? What are we missing? What can we do to change the process to make work better for you? And I think that's really, as you've mentioned, something that leaders can think about, and they can also think about the fact that you're going as a team. It's not us alone, but we are advancing as a team. We are together as a team, and we, I guess, work as a team, care for each other as a team, and progress together as a team.
Mhm.
So we're
Absolutely.
coming to the end of the. Oh, sorry, go on. There's something there.
No, 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 no. You
I
summarize
was
it
yes.
perfectly. I mean,
I was going to
wonderful.
say, thank you very much. I was going to say we're coming to the end of the hour, and I just wanted to check whether you have any final words that you would want to give leaders who would like, to prevent burnout in their team members, and they are considering what we can do to prevent. What are some things you would tell them?
I think that I've practiced self hypnosis for many years, for 20 years, uh, because of health conditions. Um, if I knew at that time what meditation, and I'm doing Vedic meditation, would bring to me, I can only recommend every single leader, I mean, everyone basically, but every single leader to do such a program or do yoga, which anchors you um, where you're gaining some new perspectives, where you are, on one side, you're connected way better with your creative side, which allows you also to get more space and to protect yourself, but at the same way also protect the people around you, the organization. And it gives you the how do you say that now in English? The calm. You are more grounded and more calm if you do that, and it allows you to look at problems or risk that you're sensing in a totally different way. So this is an individual thing that I would recommend everyone to do. um, I mean, the other items we spoke about, that prevention, talk with your HR teams and look at what can be done, because this is really a win-win for everyone. Or return on investment, as you said it. I mean, it's a zero. I mean, it's a zero sum at the end, because what you're spending here, you get it here. You get it back there. So
Yes. Thank you very much. Thank you. Thank you for sharing your own personal practice. I do meditation myself, but I think for those of you who are listening into it, it's really like what Catherine says. Any practice that can anchor you, that can give you space, that can protect you, protect the people around you. Obviously, we both do meditation, but whether it's meditation, it's yoga, perhaps some of you who are religious, prayers, or actually anything at all that gives you that peace, that gives you the space, that gives you the anchor. I think you owe it to yourself and actually to your team to do that for yourself, as you said, because I guess at the end of the day, we can only offer to others what we have for ourselves. If we are, as we said, 77% of executives are burnt out, right? So if we are burnt out, then it's really hard for us to start looking at how can we prevent burnout in our people. So thank you very much, Catherine. I really appreciate it. For those of you who are interested to learn a little bit more about the program from Catherine, you can connect with her on LinkedIn, and I think she has an email there on the screen. Um, so those I really appreciate those of you who are here with us, supporting us and listening to this webcast. I hope that it helps you out. I hope it helps your team and also your organization. And thank you, Catherine, for sharing this your experience with us. In 2 weeks' time, I'm going to do another interview with a lady who actually, interestingly, opted out of the corporate world, has decided instead that she's going to set up a support network for women. I think those of you who are listening may realize this. Women burn out at a much higher rate than men, and she's specifically setting it up for professional women who are senior business leaders, and she has found that she needed to support herself. She was, really stressed out at her work, and she's come out and she's actually supporting other women. So we are looking at what are some of the ways in which we can get support outside of the company. And then in another 2 weeks' time, I'm speaking to a gentleman whose work it is to reorganize organizations, to make work processes less likely to burn you out. So we are trying to see it as in a bigger and bigger. So the last one was like personal. Now it's individual company. The next one will be more about society and who are the people that you can get as your social support network. And finally, looking at organizations as a system and what is it that can change in the system, especially for those of you who are in a senior enough position. So I invite you to join me. Next week will be a different timing. It will be Friday morning instead of Thursday evening. So for those of you who are in North America, that will be um, Thursday evening instead of Thursday morning. So I thought a little bit of a change to accommodate some of your schedules. So thank you very much for your time with us. Thank you, Catherine. I really, really appreciate your time and your sharing with us. So I'll see you
Thank
next
you.
time. Bye bye.
Bye bye.